John Whitmore, a wealthy and successful businessman at the age of 65, sat behind the wheel of his sleek Range Rover, stranded on a dusty red dirt road in the outskirts of Mississippi. He was on his way to an important celebration, where he had been invited as an honored guest, a recognition of the success and status he had built over decades in the real estate industry. However, the glamour of his achievements couldn't rescue him from the unexpected situation he now faced. The car had suddenly stalled due to an overheated engine, leaving him helpless in the stifling heat of a southern midday. The clock on the dashboard ticked on, each second dragging by as if time itself had slowed. John impatiently tapped his fingers on the steering wheel, beads of sweat beginning to form on his forehead despite the air conditioning still humming inside the vehicle. He attempted to call for roadside assistance using his expensive phone, but there was no signal. The screen displayed the frustrating words "no service," further intensifying his anxiety. Occasionally he glanced out of the window, hoping to spot another vehicle passing by or some sign of help. Yet all he could see was a long, straight road bordered by withered trees and red dust swirling into the air with each faint breeze. John leaned back in his seat, trying to remain calm, but the discomfort in his chest only grew stronger. He was accustomed to being in control, to the smooth execution of carefully laid out plans. Yet now he found himself stuck, unable to do anything but wait. This sense of helplessness was an unfamiliar feeling for John, a man who had always believed that money and power could solve any problem. But here in the isolation of nature, he realized that all his possessions were useless in helping him escape the current predicament. John's thoughts drifted aimlessly, lost in the monotonous sound of the wind and the eerie silence of the stalled engine. The glaring sunlight poured through the windshield, making everything outside appear as if it were melting under the heat. He leaned forward, reached into the cooler in the back for a bottle of water, and took a large sip, feeling a slight relief. Yet even the cold refreshment could not ease the agitation within him. With his hands clasped on the steering wheel, John sighed deeply, his gaze fixed on the far end of the road, wondering how he might escape this situation. As the harsh sunlight continued to bear down, turning the surroundings into a shimmering, oppressive landscape, John suddenly noticed a small figure emerging on the horizon. It was a young black boy, around 13 years old, walking steadily along the road with an old, worn backpack slung loosely over his shoulder. The boy moved slowly but with deliberate, confident steps, as though he was well acquainted with the harsh terrain of the red dirt road. His faded short-sleeved shirt offered little protection from the searing heat, and his scuffed sneakers emitted faint scraping sounds against the dusty ground. John watched from a distance, wondering why a young boy would be walking alone under the scorching sun. As the boy came closer, John noticed beads of sweat dotting his forehead. But what caught his attention even more was the boy's eyes, bright, curious, and yet filled with a determination that seemed beyond his years. It was as if neither the heat nor any hardship could deter him. The boy stopped when he saw the Range Rover, tilting his head slightly as if assessing the situation. A brief hesitation crossed his face, but then he stepped forward with a natural and unhurried stride. As he approached, he stood upright, his eyes scanning the vehicle before looking directly at John, without a trace of hesitation. "Hello, sir," the boy said politely, his voice warm and slightly deep, like a refreshing breeze cutting through the stifling heat. "Are you having trouble with your car?" John, unaccustomed to engaging with strangers in situations like this, felt momentarily caught off guard by the boy's confidence. He nodded, trying to mask his surprise. "My car overheated, and I don't know what to do." The boy studied him for a moment, as if weighing the situation, and then smiled gently, revealing a set of bright white teeth that stood out against his dark complexion. "I can help," he said, his tone easygoing, as if this were something he did every day. "I often help my dad fix his car. Would you like me to take a look?" John, surprised by the boy's confidence and readiness to help, hesitated for a moment. But the boy's eye, sincere and free of doubt, convinced him to place his trust in him. John nodded, shifting slightly in his seat, sensing a small but significant change in the atmosphere around him. Without a second of hesitation, the boy set his backpack down by the roadside and walked to the front of the car, opening the hood like a seasoned mechanic. The boy leaned forward, examining the engine with calmness and focus. His small but steady hands moved over the various components, inspecting each part with a confidence far beyond his years. His fingers, rough and experienced, suggested familiarity with such tasks as though he had been doing this for a long time. John stood beside him, his eyes fixed on the boy. He felt both amazed and impressed. Oh, could someone so young work so skillfully and decisively? The boy said nothing more, occasionally furrowing his brow as though calculating something in his head. Beads of sweat ran down his forehead under the blazing sun, but he showed no sign of weariness or hesitation. After a few minutes of inspection, the boy straightened up and looked at John. "Your car just needs more coolant," he said in an even but assured tone. "I think you'll be able to drive on if I fix it temporarily." Startled by the boy's understanding, John quickly opened the trunk, retrieved a bottle of spare water, and handed it to him. "Here go. Do you need anything else?" he asked, feeling as though he was being guided by a true professional. The boy shook his head, took the bottle of water, and quickly got to work. Each of his movements was precise and unwavering, as if he had done this hundreds of times before. John stood watching, a strange mix of gratitude and shame swelling in his chest. Shame that he, a seasoned and wealthy man, didn't know how to handle such a simple problem, while the boy before him worked with astonishing expertise. In just a few minutes, the boy was finished. The car's engine roared back to life. Wiping his hands on his pants, the boy straightened up and smiled with satisfaction. "All done. You should be good to go," he said, his eyes reflecting both confidence and a hint of pride. John smiled, feeling a great weight lifted off his shoulders. Reaching into his pocket, he pulled out his wallet, took out some money, and held it out to the boy. "This is to thank you," said sincerely. "You've saved me today." The boy looked at him, his eyes widening with surprise, then shook his head. "That's not necessary, sir," he replied, his voice gentle but firm. "I'm just happy I could help." John stood there stunned, as the boy picked up his backpack and slung it over his shoulder with an air of casual ease, as though what he had just done was nothing significant. Turning away, the boy started walking again, the faint scuffing of his worn-out shoes once more audible on the dusty red road. The harsh sunlight bore down, and the boy's small figure gradually shrank into the distance, leaving John standing there in a mix of emotions, partly moved, partly deep in thought. In that moment, John felt his heart swell with a feeling he hadn't experienced in a long time, a sense of humility in the face of unconditional kindness from a stranger. He realized that not all values could be measured by money, and some things, like the boy's selfless act, were truly priceless. That night in his spacious home, John Whitmore sat alone in the living room on a plush leather armchair. The expensive oil paintings on the walls and the soft glow of the crystal chandelier above did little to dispel the emptiness he felt inside. He stared at the glass of wine on the table, his mind replaying the image of the boy on the dusty red road. A young boy, simple in appearance but radiating a strong spirit and pure kindness, so much so that John felt ashamed of himself. There was something about the way the boy had refused the money, leaving only a smile and a willingness to help, that made John feel as though he had missed something important in his busy life. He had spent his entire life building a career, making money and chasing success. Yet now, in the luxury of his mansion, he realized that none of those achievements brought him the sense of fulfillment that the boy's act of kindness had. The next morning, John woke earlier than usual. Instead of diving into his work or planning new ambitious projects, he decided to do something he had never considered before: a turn to the road where he had met the black boy the day before. He drove slowly, scanning every stretch of the road, trying to catch sight of the boy's familiar figure. After hours of searching without success, he decided to ask the locals for help. John stopped at a small gas station, where an elderly man sat under the shade of the porch to escape the sun. When John described the boy, the man nodded and pointed toward a poor neighborhood on the edge of town. "You were talking about Malik, aren't you, good kid? He lives with his mom in a little house near the edge of the woods." John thanked the man and drove to the address he was given. When he arrived, he saw a small wooden house with peeling paint and a roof showing clear signs of wear. The front yard was overgrown with weeds, and the wooden fence was leaning precariously, barely holding together. He took a deep breath, feeling an indescribable pang of sorrow as he compared this humble home to the opulence of his own. He knocked on the door, and within moments, a woman in her 40s appeared. She looked tired, but her face still held a gentle warmth. Her eyes lit up with curiosity as she saw a well-dressed stranger standing at her door. "Can I help you?" she asked softly. "I met your son," John replied, feeling a wave of warmth as he looked into her kind eyes. "He helped me fix my car. I want to thank him and do something for your family." The woman smiled faintly. "That must be Malik, my son. He loves helping others. He's home soon." Malik appeared from behind the house, his clothes slightly dirty, as though he had been working in the backyard. When he saw John, his eyes sparkled with a mix of curiosity and surprise. "What are you doing here?" he asked, his voice filled with astonishment. "I wanted to thank you again," John replied, a kind smile spreading across his face. "And I want to help your family in any way I can." At first, the woman and Malik declined. They insisted they didn't eat anything and could manage on their own. But John's persistence and genuine sincerity eventually won them over. He explained that this was to charity, but a way for him to repay the kindness Malik had shown him. In the end, they agreed. In the weeks that followed, Malik's family home underwent a complete transformation. A team of workers was hired to repair the roof, replace the broken fence, and repaint the faded walls. John also purchased new items to replace the family's worn-out furnishings. The small house gradually became more polished and welcoming, a brighter reflection of the hope Malik had inspired in John's heart. But John didn't stop at renovating the house. He also arranged for Malik to get acquainted with an apprentice at local mechanical workshops. At first, Malik was hesitant, but as he began working with machinery and repairs, his true passion quickly emerged. John noticed the boy's eyes light up with excitement each time he learned something new, and that sight brought him a joy he hadn't felt in years. John didn't just change Malik's family home, he created a turning point in the boy's life. Malik not only gained new skills but also realized that kindness and helping others could ripple outward, touching lives in ways he had never imagined. On the day the project was completed, the entire neighborhood seemed to come alive with rare joy and excitement. Malik's neighbors gathered to celebrate, each bringing a small gift: homemade jars of jam, freshly baked goods, or hastily picked flowers from their gardens. Children ran around the yard, their laughter echoing everywhere. The house, once a symbol of hardship and weariness, now stood proudly with a completely renewed appearance. Its bright walls, sturdy roof, and tidy front yard with a new swing glistening under the afternoon sun radiated a fresh sense of hope and possibility. John leaned against the freshly painted fence, watching the scene unfold before him with a satisfied smile. He felt a simple yet profound happiness, a feeling he had long forgotten. This wasn't the joy of closing a lucrative deal or attending lavish parties, but the fulfillment of seeing someone else's life become better because of genuine effort and care. As the crowd began to disperse, Malik ran over to John. The boy, now with eyes brimming with hope and confidence, looked at him with heartfelt emotion. "Mr. John," he said, his voice sincere but slightly hesitant, "someday I want to do what you've done for my family." John was silent for a moment, feeling the weight of the boy's words. He placed a hand on Malik's shoulder, his gaze gently yet firm. "You've already started," he said in a warm, steady. "Your kindness is the torch, and I've just helped it shine brighter." The boy smiled, his expression filled with determination. Malik said nothing more, but his eyes conveyed everything: a promise to keep that torch burning and spread its light to others. In the years that followed, Malik grew into a young man with a passionate heart and a strong will. Under John's guidance and support, he not only mastered mechanical work but also became a skilled and talented engineer. At the workshop where he worked, Malik quickly stood out, not just for his exceptional skills but also for his hard-working attitude and willingness to help others. Whenever a new person entered the workshop, whether it was an apprentice or a customer in need, Malik would approach them with openness and genuine kindness. He never forgot the feeling he had that day on the dusty red road, seeing a man in need and lighting a spark in his life. It was a light that Malik now carried forward, illuminating the lives of many others. But Malik's kindness didn't stop at the workplace. He often returned to his impoverished neighborhood where he had grown up to help struggling families. He repaired houses, fixed cars for free for those who couldn't afford it, and sometimes simply sat down to listen to someone else's story. Malik never sought recognition or praise. He did it all because of the kindness John had ignited within him. John, now older, remained closely connected to Malik. Every time he saw the boy he once knew transformed into a strong, compassionate man helping others, he felt an indescribable pride. Malik was not just a skilled worker or a devoted son. He had become a symbol of kindness and hope in his small community. Malik's actions gradually began to ripple outward. The community where he lived grew increasingly connected, and stories of his kindness inspired many others. During their heartfelt meetings, John often said to Malik, "Your torch doesn't just light the way for me anymore. Now it's shining for the entire community. Keep it burning brightly." Malik would always smile in response. "I will, Mr. John, not just for you but for everyone who needs me." And so, from a boy standing by the roadside years ago, Malik became a man who spread hope and kindness to others. The torch he lit not only brightened his own life but also illuminated a path for an entire generation to follow. For John, it was one of the greatest accomplishments of his life, greater than money or the status he had once achieved.